What if summer never came? In 1816, it didn't. The sky went dark, the world grew cold, and civilization began to starve. And for over a century, no one knew why. The year is 1816, but something is deeply wrong with the world. Across the Northern Hemisphere, the seasons have forgotten their rhythm. Summer never arrives. History remembers it by many chilling names. The year without a summer, the poverty year, and in America, the grimly poetic 1800 and froze to death. A strange, cold, dry fog blankets the land, a fog that rain cannot wash away and wind cannot disperse. The scenes are surreal. Snow falls in June in New England, killing newborn lambs and freshly planted crops. Rivers in Pennsylvania freeze in August. In Europe, endless, torrential rains keep people locked indoors for weeks. In his London diary, John Quincy Adams complains of almost incessant rain. In New Hampshire, a woman named Hannah Newcomb writes that her family keeps fires burning through July, lamenting that all nature seems to be shrouded in gloom. To the people living through it, the cause was a complete mystery. They looked for answers in superstition and fear. Was it divine punishment? Was it the sunspots? They couldn't know that these were not isolated crises. They were all connected by a single cataclysmic event that had occurred a year earlier on the other side of the world. April 10th, 1815. On the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia, Mount Tambora awakens with unimaginable violence. The explosion is the loudest sound in recorded history, heard over 1,400 kilometers away. This was a VEI-7, a super colossal event. It spewed out over 150 cubic kilometers of rock and ash, blasting a column 43 kilometers high deep into the stratosphere. The sheer force of the blast decapitated the mountain, reducing its height by nearly 1.5 kilometers. For the people nearby, it was the apocalypse. Scorching hot pyroclastic flows annihilated entire villages. Tsunamis ravaged the coastlines. The immediate death toll was over 10,000. But that was only the beginning. Ashfall poisoned the water and smothered the land, triggering widespread famine and disease. In total, nearly 100,000 people in the region would perish. And crucially, Tambora didn't just explode once. It erupted for 3 long months, continuously pumping a massive payload into the upper atmosphere. It wasn't just the power, but its duration that sealed the planet's fate. The real climate killer wasn't the ash. It was an invisible gas, sulfur dioxide. Tambora injected up to 120 million tons of it into the stratosphere. There, it transformed into tiny droplets of sulfuric acid, creating a vast cloud of sulfate aerosols. High-altitude winds spread this cloud around the globe, wrapping the planet in a translucent veil. This aerosol veil acted like a planetary sunshade, reflecting sunlight back into space. Global average temperatures dropped by as much as 1 degree Celsius. This cooling was amplified because the Earth was already in a chilly phase, the tail end of the Little Ice Age. Tambora's blast pushed an already stressed climate system over the edge. The planet had caught a cold, and now humanity would begin to starve. This is what happens when the world's food supply is severed at its source. In North America, repeated summer frosts wiped out the corn harvest. Food prices skyrocketed. For thousands in New England, it was the final straw. It triggered a massive wave of migration westward, profoundly shaping the expansion of the United States. Europe, exhausted by the Napoleonic Wars, fared no better. The cold, wet weather decimated crops. Famine led to violence. Food riots erupted across the continent. Governments, terrified of revolution, were forced to organize massive international grain purchases and distribute aid. It was a foundational step towards the modern social safety net. But the apocalypse unfolding in the West was only half the story. On the other side of the world, in the disrupted waters of Asia, the volcano was about to give birth to an invisible biological killer. In China's Yunnan province, the unseasonable cold led to a 3-year famine. Desperate farmers, unable to grow rice, turned to a hardier cash crop, the opium poppy. This agricultural shift would have profound geopolitical consequences. And in India, the disrupted monsoon radically altered the aquatic environment of the Bay of Bengal. This shock is believed to have triggered a mutation in a local bacterium, *Vibrio cholerae*. A new, far more virulent strain of cholera was born. Carried along trade routes, it exploded out of the Ganges Delta, sparking the first global cholera pandemic. A volcanic eruption had, through a complex chain of events, unleashed a biological killer that would claim millions of lives. Out of the unending gloom and desperation, 2 strange and brilliant things were born. One was a monster that would haunt our nightmares. The other was a machine that would change the world forever. During that miserable summer of 1816, a group of literary friends, including Mary Shelley and Lord Byron, were trapped indoors by Lake Geneva. To pass the time, they held a ghost story competition. A teenage Mary Shelley, inspired by the gloom, conceived a story that would become a cornerstone of horror. Frankenstein. But the crisis also sparked practical innovation. The catastrophic failure of the oat crop, the primary fuel for horses, led to a transport crisis. In Germany, an inventor named Carl von Drais sought a solution. His invention, the Lauf machine, was the direct ancestor of the modern bicycle. A volcano had inadvertently kick-started a revolution in personal transportation. For over a century, the true cause of 1816 remained a mystery. But slowly, the pieces came together. In the early 20th century, a physicist named William Humphreys explicitly blamed Tambora, but the definitive proof the smoking gun came from deep within the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica. Scientists drilling ice cores found a massive spike in sulfate deposits, precisely dated to 1815. It was the physical fingerprint of Tambora's aerosol veil preserved in ice. The puzzle was finally solved. The Year Without a Summer was a horrifying natural experiment in abrupt climate change. A single volcano triggered a cascade of crises that rippled across the entire planet, demonstrating how fragile our global systems truly are. The parallels to our own time are impossible to ignore. But there is a profound difference. The cooling from Tambora was temporary. The warming from our greenhouse gas emissions is cumulative and will last for centuries. The people of 1816 were innocent victims. We, in the Anthropocene, are the agents of our own climate disruption, armed with the scientific knowledge of its cause and consequences. The story of Tambora is not just a story about the past. It is a warning for our future, a stark reminder of the immense power of our planet, the profound fragility of our civilization, and the urgent need to respond to our own slow-motion Tambora, the modern climate crisis.